Before you hear the story, understand one thing. What you're about to listen to is not a legend, not a rumor, and not a movie plot. This happened in real America, in a quiet New York neighborhood where families slept peacefully until one house changed everything. Tonight, we're not talking about a ghost that jumps out to scare you. We're talking about a house that waits. A house that listens. A house that remembers every scream, every prayer, and every life taken inside its walls. At 112 Ocean Avenue, Amityville, 6 people were murdered in their sleep. No neighbors heard screams. No one heard gunshots. And when the killer was asked why, he said the house told him to do it. 1 year later, another family moved in. They didn't know the walls were still awake. They didn't know the house woke people at the exact time of the murders, every single night. They didn't know something inside watched them sleep, whispered to their children, and followed them room to room. And they didn't know they would be forced to run for their lives, leaving everything behind, because some places don't to let you leave peacefully. Stay with me till the end, because the most disturbing part of this story is not what happened inside the Amityville house. It's what investigators, neighbors, and later owners discovered after everyone escaped. And once you hear that final detail, you may never look at a quiet American home the same way again. The house at 112 Ocean Avenue, Amityville, New York, looked peaceful from the outside. A large Dutch colonial home, sitting quietly beside a canal, with perfectly aligned windows that resembled watching eyes. To neighbors, it appeared ordinary, almost welcoming. But those who lived nearby knew something was wrong with that house. Long before the Lutz family moved in, the land and walls had already absorbed something dark, something violent, something that never truly left. In November 1974, the silence of the neighborhood was shattered when Ronald DeFeo Jr. murdered his entire family while they slept inside that very house. 6 people were killed in cold blood. What disturbed investigators was not just the brutality, but the calmness. Neighbors reported hearing no screams, no gunshots, no struggle. It was as if the house itself had swallowed the sound. Ronald later claimed that voices in the house told him to kill. Many dismissed this as an excuse, but others weren't so sure. Just 1 year later, the Lutz family, George, Kathy, and their 3 children moved into the house, unaware of how deeply the walls remembered what had happened. From the very first night, things felt wrong. George woke every night at exactly 3:15 a.m., the same time the DeFeo murders were believed to have occurred. He didn't know why. His body simply woke him, as if summoned. As days passed, the atmosphere inside the house changed. Cold spots formed in warm rooms. Strange odors appeared, suddenly rotting flesh, sulfur, and damp decay. Kathy felt watched constantly, especially near the staircase. The children began talking to an invisible friend they called Jody, described as a large pig with glowing red eyes. At night, George heard footsteps pacing the halls when everyone was asleep. The house began to change the people inside it. George grew aggressive, obsessed with the basement, spending hours staring at the walls. His personality shifted. He stopped caring about work, stopped sleeping, and became irrationally angry. Kathy suffered vivid nightmares of the murders, scenes she had never been told in detail. She saw bodies, blood, and heard screams that felt painfully real. One night, Kathy awoke to find George levitating above the bed. His face was frozen, eyes open but unseeing. When he finally dropped, he claimed he remembered nothing. On other nights, Kathy felt hands gripping her body, holding her down as whispers filled the room. She couldn't move. She couldn't scream, only watch. The house itself seemed alive. Doors slammed on their own. Windows opened in freezing weather. Black sludge oozed from walls and keyholes. Flies swarmed rooms in winter. A priest who came to bless the house was violently ill afterward and heard a voice commanding him to leave. He never returned. The final night came suddenly. George woke the family and told them they had to leave immediately. No explanation. No packing. They fled the house in the early morning hours, leaving everything behind. They never spent another night there. Even after they left, the house did not rest. Subsequent owners reported strange experiences, though many refused to speak publicly. Renovations were done. Windows were changed. The address was altered. But those who stayed too long felt it. That pressure, that presence, that sensation of being watched by something ancient and patient. Skeptics argue it was psychological, stress, suggestion. But they cannot explain how unrelated people, across decades, described the same feelings, the same fear, the same sense that the house was not empty, because maybe it never was. Maybe the Amityville house doesn't haunt people. Maybe it waits for them. And maybe the scariest part isn't what happened there. It's what still might. What makes the Amityville house truly disturbing is not just what was seen or heard, but what followed people after they left. The Lutz family claimed that for months after escaping, they were plagued by nightmares so vivid they struggled to separate sleep from reality. George woke drenched in sweat, convinced he could still smell the house-damp wood, cold air, and something rotten beneath it all. Kathy felt sudden waves of fear in ordinary places, as if something unseen had learned her patterns and followed her thoughts instead of her body. Investigators who later examined the case noticed something unsettling. Every witness described the house differently, yet the feeling was identical. A pressure in the chest, a sensation of being evaluated, as if the house was not reacting but deciding. Psychologists struggled to explain how multiple people, interviewed separately, could describe the same emotional response without influencing one another. The fear was not chaotic, it was controlled. The basement remained the darkest mystery. Even experienced contractors refused to work there alone. Tools went missing. Flashlights failed. Some claimed the walls felt warm to the touch, while others swore they heard breathing that did not belong to anyone present. One worker later admitted that he felt an overwhelming urge to sit on the floor and stay there, as if something wanted him closer, deeper, quieter. Neighbors continued to notice strange patterns, lights turning on and off in empty rooms, curtains moving when the windows were sealed shut, reflections in the canal at night that didn't match the house above them. And yet, when police were called, nothing was ever found. No damage, no forced entry. Just a house standing patiently, as if aware it would never be punished. Over the years, the story became a battleground between believers and skeptics. Books were written. Films were made. The house became famous, but fame did not weaken it. If anything, it strengthened whatever remained inside, because attention fed it, curiosity invited it, and fear confirmed its power. Some paranormal researchers believe the murders did not create the haunting, but awakened it, that the land had always held something dark, and violence merely gave it permission to speak. Others believe the house itself became a container, storing emotional energy like a battery, replaying pain until it learned how to influence the living. What chills investigators most is this: no matter how many times the house was renovated, repainted, or redesigned, reports never stopped entirely. The structure changed, the address changed, the windows changed, but the feeling did not. Those who stayed long enough reported the same thought creeping into their minds late at night. This house knows I am here, not watching, not haunting, knowing. And perhaps that is the true horror of Amityville. It does not chase you. It does not scream. It does not need to. It simply waits for the moment you feel safe. Because once you do, the house remembers you. And it always remembers. Years passed, yet the house developed a strange reputation among those who studied it closely. Not fear familiarity. People who spent time researching the property noticed a disturbing pattern. The longer someone focused on Amityville, the more personally affected they became. Researchers reported intrusive thoughts, sudden mood shifts, and an unexplainable pull toward the house, even when they had no reason to return. It was as if the house extended beyond its physical walls, imprinting itself onto memory. One investigator claimed that while reviewing old floor plans late at night, he heard a sound behind him, a soft, deliberate knock, spaced evenly like a heartbeat. When he turned around, his office was empty. The sound stopped the moment he acknowledged it. From that night on, he could no longer work alone. Silence triggered panic. Darkness felt crowded. Former residents of nearby homes later admitted something they had never shared publicly. Children in the neighborhood avoided looking at the house, not because they were told to, but because they felt something was wrong. Some said the windows followed them. Others said they felt sick when passing it. One child reportedly asked their parent why the house was angry all the time. Over time, subtle changes were reported inside the structure itself. Floors creaked in patterns that resembled pacing. Rooms felt different depending on the time of night. The temperature in the house did not simply drop, it shifted, as if coldness moved intentionally from one area to another. Motion sensors installed during renovations were triggered repeatedly, yet cameras captured nothing. The movement was real. The source was not. What disturbed professionals most was the house's apparent restraint. It did not escalate quickly. It tested boundaries. Those who ignored early signs often experienced a slow psychological erosion, sleep disruption, heightened paranoia, irrational fear, and emotional detachment. The house did not break people suddenly. It wore them down. One former occupant described waking with the certainty that something had stood over them all night, not touching, not breathing, just close enough to be known. They said the fear was not in being watched, but in being understood, as if the house had learned how they think. Eventually, most people left quietly. No press, no statements, no warnings. They sold, moved on, and refused interviews. Not because nothing happened, but because explaining it felt dangerous. As if speaking too clearly about the house might draw its attention back to them. Even now, long after the story faded from headlines, something remains unresolved. Records show unexplained gaps, missing maintenance logs, altered blueprints, inconsistencies in reports, filed years apart by unrelated parties. Each inconsistency small on its own. Together, they suggest something resisted being fully documented. Because documentation means definition, and definition means control. Whatever exists in the Amityville house does not want to be defined. It prefers uncertainty, doubt, silence. That is why the house still stands, not screaming for attention, not begging belief. It does not need to convince anyone. It only needs time, because sooner or later, someone always comes back. And when they do, the house is ready, waiting. If you're still listening, then the house did its job. Because Amityville was never meant to be understood, only experienced. The walls don't need belief. They don't need witnesses. They only need time, and someone willing to stay just a little longer. Most people who enter the house leave with questions. Some leave with fear, and a few leave with something they can't explain, an uneasiness that follows them home, lingers in the dark, and waits for the moment they're alone. So before you turn off this video, before you look away, ask yourself one thing. If a house could remember you, would you know? If stories like this keep you awake, if you want to hear what others were too afraid to talk about, subscribe to the channel, because there are more places like Amityville, more houses that don't scream, they wait. Turn on notifications so you don't miss the next true horror story from America. And remember, some stories end when the video ends. This one doesn't. Good night.